Crime spree has been going on for about a decade in Wisconsin, Illinois, and his home state of Ohio.
The suspect may well have been involved in at least 17 homicides. 17 homicides which our investigation indicates some of which may have occurred outside the city of Milwaukee.
Authorities here are wondering how anyone could have committed these gruesome acts, just as others here in Milwaukee are wondering how police couldn't have known, especially since Dahmer was a convicted sex offender out on parole. At least one young man who claims he got away from Dahmer is angry. Angry that when he told police he was drugged and nearly strangled by Dahmer, they apparently decided it was a lover's quarrel.
And despite the fact that I kept telling them I didn't know the man, and they basically just laughed at me.
Police today said the victim reported only a robbery, not an assault. They did question Dahmer about the incident, but were satisfied with his explanation. Neither police, his parole officer, nor his neighbors were persistent enough to uncover Dahmer's secrets. Jacqueline Adams, CBS News, Milwaukee.
Dahmer's alleged multiple killings may even include some outside the United States. The Milwaukee Journal newspaper reports that authorities in Germany want to question Dahmer about 5 mutilation murders near a U.S. Army base in Germany where Dahmer served in the early 1980s.
In Milwaukee, suspected mass killer Jeffrey Dahmer was formally charged late today with 4 counts of first-degree homicide. Prosecutors said they expect to bring more charges against the man, whose apartment, it turns out, was loaded with body parts. NBC's Stan Bernard tonight looks at a troubled life.
Jeffrey Dahmer as he appeared in court. Prosecutors and psychiatrists want any information on what triggered Dahmer to kill. Investigators now believe there will be at least 17 murders. The prosecutors of this case have expanded their investigation to include the last 10 years of Dahmer's life. They are suggesting the killings went on undetected despite warnings. Marty Schmidt was a high school friend of Dahmer's.
It just seemed to me that he was so lost that I felt real strongly, always like something very tragic was going to happen.
She said back then he had a major problem with alcohol.
And yet I remember that kid that, somebody should have helped and didn't.
Dahmer was convicted on a child molestation charge in 1988 and then released in 1990 despite the protests of his father. Other serial killers say they were also ignored before and after they started killing. Wesley Allen Dodd.
Every time I was released, not punished, not sent into any kind of treatment program, I went out and did something even more serious. Finally, I just kept going, and I've said it over and over and over. Things just keep progressing, and finally killing was the only thing left.
Elmer Wayne Henley convicted of 6 murders, suspected of 21 others.
I just was not in control of my life. I was shocked that God didn't strike me dead.
Dr. Bruce Jackson is a Milwaukee psychiatrist and has been working with authorities on the Dahmer case. Despite the growing body of knowledge about serial killers like Dahmer, they are almost impossible to stop.
They tend to be avoidant, and therefore they tend to be very secretive. Very few people are allowed into their souls.
And they're full of this rage, and over a period of time it seeps out.
Some of the psychiatrists are fearful there will be copycat killings by other serial killers who now feel they are being ignored. Stan Bernard, NBC News, Milwaukee.
Mass murder case.
One of the victims of alleged killer Jeffrey Dahmer is a former St. Paul resident.
It was early Tuesday morning when police began carrying boxes of body parts from Dahmer's apartment. He reportedly confessed to committing the crimes and was ready to identify the victims. Milwaukee police then called St. Paul authorities to identify one of the victims.
KARE 11's Brad Woodard is in the newsroom. Brad, who is the latest victim?
Well, Paul and Joan, his name is Joseph Arthur Breedhoft. The 25-year-old was born in St. Paul, and he lived here as recently as 4 years ago, but his home address is now listed in Illinois, and that's the connection because many of the victims in this case are from Illinois, more specifically the Chicago area. Joseph Breedhoft was positively identified as one of Dahmer's alleged victims after St. Paul police faxed a set of his fingerprints this morning to Milwaukee. The 25-year-old Breedhoft was arrested in September 1987 for a domestic assault and possession of an assault weapon. Beyond that, St. Paul police know nothing about his fate.
Absolutely no idea on that. Our knowledge of the case is that this person lived here in 1987 and was arrested here by us. Milwaukee asked for some routine information, and we supplied it.
Meanwhile, Breithoff's suspected killer made his first appearance in a Milwaukee courtroom today. Jeffrey Dahmer has been formally charged with 4 counts of first-degree intentional murder. But authorities say the number of charges is likely to grow.
We have also, in addition, through our investigation, determined that the suspect may well have been involved in at least 17 homicides. 17 homicides which our investigation indicates, some of which may have occurred outside the city of Milwaukee.
And police say possibly outside the state of Wisconsin. In fact, Paul and Joan, the Milwaukee Journal, this just came in, is reporting that police in Germany want to question Dahmer about 5 mutilation murders near an army base where he was stationed about 10 years ago. Also, we've just learned from a court document that was filed this afternoon that Dahmer, the document states that Dahmer had sex with 3 of the 4 victims he's charged with killing, and it mentions cannibalism, saying that he dismembered his victims and saved one of them to eat. Saved one of the hearts to eat.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
Thank you very much, Brad.
Have you had enough time to talk to your lawyers about that?
Yes.
I'll accept the waiver, Mr. Boyle.
Dahmer's next court appearance is scheduled to be on August 6th, when he's expected to be charged with more murder counts. It has been quite a day here in Milwaukee. We have learned more about Jeffrey Dahmer, more about his victims. But as the details in this case keep coming in, it just seems that the mystery and the horror of what's happened here in Milwaukee only seems to grow. Back to you, Don, in Minneapolis.
Thank you very much, Esme. There are new developments.
The suspect's apartment. Don?
Thank you very much, Caroline. In our second look at the lead story tonight, we get a report from our Esme Murphy in Milwaukee, where Jeffrey Dahmer made his first court appearance today. She reports police have identified more victims and plan on more than just the 4 murder charges filed today.
Jeffrey Dahmer, who police say has now confessed to 17 murders, appeared calm as he walked into the courtroom. When Judge Frank Crivello asked if he understood he was being charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder, Dahmer, flanked by his 2 attorneys, replied, "I understand, Your Honor." And Dahmer fielded a series of questions about the defense's decision to waive the right to a speedy preliminary hearing.
Has anyone made any threats against you to get you to waive the 10-day limit?
No, they didn't, Your Honor.
Has anyone promised you anything to get you to waive the limit?
No, they didn't.
Have you had enough time to talk to your lawyers about that?
Yes.
I'll accept the waiver, Mr. Boyle.
As Dahmer appeared in court documents were filed that confirm earlier reports of cannibalism. The documents also state that Dahmer had sex with some of his victims before he killed them, and that he was also a necrophiliac. As authorities continue to release details of the murders, they still have no explanation as to why it all happened.
To imagine that any human being, any civilized human being in civilized society could do something as gruesome. Other than that, it's inexplicable.
Corrections officers report Dahmer is being held under a suicide watch in the city jail and is being checked by guards every 10 minutes. Authorities here say it's possible they could still link Dahmer to even more murders. With photographer Joe Berglove, Esme Murphy, WCCO Television News, Milwaukee.
And now, officials in Germany want to question Dahmer about 5 mutilation deaths there because Dahmer served at a nearby U.S. military base about the same time.
The crimes are motivated by bias. That Dahmer hates gays and hates blacks. But for those still waiting for a missing family member, the reasons don't matter.
And I want to know what happened to my son.
Now, the man who led Milwaukee police to Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment credits God for his escape. Tracy Edwards told a Milwaukee newspaper this morning that God and some self-taught karate allowed him to get away from Dahmer and flag police down. Now, later on in this newscast, we'll take you live to Milwaukee for the very latest. Street outside the apartment building where Jeffrey Dahmer lives. She called the police department. Officers came to the scene. She said, please check it out. They apparently did, and it appears as if they believed the story by Dahmer that he was actually in Dahmer's custody, that he was either drinking or some way drugged. It appears as if they let him go back into the apartment with Jeff Dahmer, believing that he was simply intoxicated. This woman claims she insisted to police that there was something wrong, that it wasn't what it appeared to be. They actually had this child in their hands and apparently let him go, and he became one of the victims of this tragedy. And that it is. All right, Ellen May, live from Milwaukee. Thank you.
Dahmer on Thursday in connection with the mutilation murders of 4 men whose bodies